Welcome back to the Deep Dive, where you bring the sources and we dig out the most fascinating nuggets of knowledge. Today we're tackling something I know a lot of you struggle with: holiday decorating, especially when it comes to those tall trees and the seemingly endless strings of lights.
Ah, yes, that picture-perfect tree all aglow with twinkling lights. It's a vision we all share, but getting there can be a real challenge.
Exactly. So we asked you to join us today to talk about a potential solution we came across called the ELF Easy Light Feeder. Have you heard of this thing?
I have. It's designed to make hanging lights on tall trees faster, safer, and you don't even need a ladder.
No ladder.
Yeah.
All right, color me intrigued. I'm ready to dive in and learn more about this ELF. It's not magic, though, is it? What's the secret sauce?
Not magic, just some clever design. It's made from ABS plastic, which is super durable and impact resistant.
So it's built to last. That's
Huh.
reassuring. I've definitely had my fair share of flimsy decorating tools that have bitten the dust mid-decoration.
Yeah.
But what about the lights themselves? Will it work with any type of light string? Some people are really into those big vintage-style bulbs.
It's designed to work with most standard light strings, but they do advise against using it with the glass C9 bulbs. Those can be a bit heavy and might not feed through the ELF as smoothly.
Okay, that makes sense. So it's not a one-size-fits-all solution, but it does seem to cover the vast majority of light types.
Speaking of fitting, how does the ELF actually work? Can you walk us through the process?
Sure, it's actually a really simple two-step process. You attach the ELF to a standard extension pole, like the kind you probably already have for reaching high branches.
Got it. I was going to ask about that. So you do still need an extension pole.
You do. Then you feed your lights through the ELF and start hanging them on the lower branches.
Makes sense. Start low, work your way up. Classic decorating strategy. But I'm guessing that's where the extension pole comes in for those really high branches. Exactly. As you move up the tree, you simply extend the pole to reach higher. The ELF acts like a guide, smoothly feeding the lights onto the branches. No more climbing shaky ladders.
Wow, that's pretty ingenious. You're essentially controlling the placement from the ground. But what about fine-tuning? Sometimes you need to nudge a light a little to the left or right for that perfect placement.
Ah, you're thinking like a true decorator. They thought of that too. It comes with this little tool called the ELF hook. It lets you make those final adjustments.
The ELF hook.
Yeah.
That sounds interesting. So not only does this thing help you hang lights, but it also takes care of the little details.
Precisely. And the ELF hook isn't just for adjustments, it's also a lifesaver when it's time to take the lights down after the holidays.
Now that you mentioned taking down the lights, I'm suddenly remembering all those tangled messes I've wrestled with in the past. Tell me more about this magical ELF hook. How does it make life easier?
Well, it has this clever little center slot that grips the light wire securely, so you can make horizontal adjustments and easily access the plug end when it's time to take everything down.
No more wrestling with those stubborn plugs buried deep within the branches. I'm starting to see why people are raving about this ELF. But before we get too carried away, I want to remind our listeners that we love uncovering hidden gems like this. If you're enjoying this deep dive, don't forget to like and subscribe for more fascinating discoveries. Now, back to the ELF. We've touched on user reviews, and it seems like people are genuinely impressed with this tool. What are some of the things people are saying about it?
One thing that pops up a lot is how much time it saves. People are amazed by how much faster they can decorate their trees, especially those with really tall trees.
I bet. I can only imagine the time difference. I'm guessing there are also some tips and tricks people have learned along the way. Any insights from the reviews?
Yeah, one common tip is that the ELF works best when you wrap the lights around the tree's circumference. Trying to weave them back and forth across branches can be a bit more challenging.
Makes sense. Wrapping probably helps keep the lights flowing smoothly through the ELF and creates a more even distribution of light. But even with those few tips, I'm sure there have been some hiccups along the way. What about any negative feedback? Have people run into any challenges using the ELF?
A few people mentioned some difficulty using it with larger bulbs, which makes sense given what we discussed about bulb compatibility.
Yeah, that tracks.
Yeah.
But even with those few exceptions, it seems like the overall consensus is that the ELF is a real game changer for holiday decorating.
Absolutely. And speaking of game changers, there's this one review that really highlights the impact the ELF can have. A customer with 8 evergreen trees.
8 trees.
Yeah. All over 20 feet tall. They got a quote for professional lighting installation, and it was a whopping $6,000.
$6,000. That's more than some people spend on their entire holiday budget.
Right, but instead of breaking the bank, they decided to give the ELF a try, and guess what?
They lit all 8 trees themselves and saved a ton of money.
Exactly.
That's incredible. It's not just a time saver and a safety enhancer, but also a potential money saver.
Yeah.
It's democratizing professional level decorating and making it accessible to everyone.
I think that's a great way to put it. It's empowering people to create those stunning holiday displays without having to shell out a fortune.
You know, I'm really starting to get excited about this ELF. Speaking of getting a visual, you also sent over a YouTube video that demonstrates how to use it. Should we watch it together and break down the key steps?
Let's do it. Visualizing the process is always helpful.
Awesome. Let's dive into the world of the ELF Easy Light Feeder. Okay, so we've got the video queued up. Using the ELF Easy Light Feeder, a no-ladder Christmas light hanger. Catchy title. What are we looking at here?
It looks like a step-by-step guide to using the ELF, and they're starting with the basics, loading the lights. You can't hang them if they're not loaded into the ELF, right?
Right, so how do you do that? It looks like there's a special bag involved.
Exactly. The ELF comes with this sack that's specifically designed to hold your lights and prevent those dreaded tangles as you feed them through.
Ah, okay, so it's like a big sock for your Christmas lights.
Yeah, kind of. They emphasize feeding the lights in hand over hand so they coil naturally at the bottom of the sack. No stuffing allowed.
Smart. That's a classic trick for avoiding tangles. All right, the lights are loaded. What's next? Do you just start hanging them right away?
Well, they start by showing you how to hang those lower branches, the ones you can easily reach without the ELF. You just walk around the tree and place them as you normally would.
Okay, that makes sense. But here comes the good part, right? How do they tackle those higher branches?
This is where the ELF shines. They show you how to feed the lights coming from the tree up through the ELF, and then you plug those lights into the ones coming from the sack.
So you're basically creating a bridge between the lights on the tree and the fresh supply in the sack.
Exactly. And now for the really cool part. You attach the ELF to your extension pole, make sure it's nice and secure.
Okay, I can see where this is going. So now you've got this long arm with the ELF at the end to reach those high branches.
Exactly. And they recommend raising the light string a bit higher each time you go around the tree, so you gradually work your way to the top.
So much safer and easier than a ladder. No more wobbling around trying to reach those top branches. But what about making sure the lights are evenly spaced and look just right?
That's where that ELF hook we talked about earlier comes in handy. They show you how to use it to nudge lights into specific positions and even adjust the drape of the lights.
It's like having an extension of your finger way up there on those high branches.
Right.
So even if you prefer a more handcrafted look, the ELF still gives you that control.
Right, and it makes it really easy to wind the lights around the tree for that classic wrapped look.
I'm impressed. This ELF really seems to have thought of everything. But before we move on to discuss the broader decorating trends we've been seeing, do you want to highlight any particularly impactful user reviews?
There's one that I thought was really interesting. This customer had 8 evergreen trees on their property.
8. Wow. That's a lot of trees.
And they were all over 20 feet tall. They got a quote for professional lighting installation, and it was, are you ready for this?
Hit me with it.
$6,000.
$6,000. That's wild. I mean, I knew professional installation could get pricey, but that's next level.
Right. So instead of breaking the bank, they decided to try the ELF.
Let me guess. They managed to do it themselves and save a ton of money.
You got it. And they said they couldn't be happier with the results.
See, this is why I love gadgets like this. They're not just convenient. They can be real game changers, especially for people who might not have the budget for professional help.
It really is democratizing holiday decorating in a way, empowering people to create those magical displays themselves.
Now, before we move on to the impact of tools like the ELF on holiday decorating trends, I want to remind our listeners that they can see all this in action. Where can they find that video we've been talking about?
We've got a link to the YouTube video right in the description of today's deep dive.
Awesome. Go check it out, folks. It's definitely worth watching.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've seen the ELF in action, heard rave reviews, and even witnessed its potential to save people thousands of dollars. But I'm curious, are there any downsides? Are there any limitations to what the ELF can do?
Well, like any tool, it has its strengths and its areas where it might not be the ideal solution.
for example?
Some reviewers mentioned that it can be a bit tricky to use with larger or heavier bulbs. We talked about that earlier with the C9 bulbs.
That's right, those big vintage-style bulbs. So not a perfect solution for every single decorating scenario.
Exactly. And it definitely works best when you're wrapping lights around the tree rather than weaving them back and forth across the branches.
I can see that. The wrapping technique probably creates a smoother flow for the lights as they feed through the ELF.
Exactly. But even with those considerations, the overall feedback is overwhelmingly positive. People seem to appreciate the safety, the convenience, and the time-saving aspects of using the ELF.
I'm wondering if there are any unintended consequences of tools like this becoming more popular. I mean, they're clearly making it easier than ever to achieve those professional-looking holiday displays.
That's an interesting point. It does make you wonder if the rising popularity of DIY decorating, fueled by tools like the ELF, will have any impact on the professional lighting industry.
Right. Will people be less inclined to hire professionals when they can achieve similar results themselves?
It's certainly a possibility. But I think there will always be a market for professional services, especially for those who value the convenience or who have truly elaborate decorating plans that might be beyond the scope of DIY.
Yeah, makes sense. There's always going to be that segment of the population who prefers to leave it to the experts. But for those who are looking for a safer, more affordable way to create a stunning holiday display, the ELF seems like a pretty great option.
Absolutely. And it's not just limited to holiday decorating either. Imagine using it to hang lights for weddings, parties, or even just to add a touch of ambiance to your backyard or patio.
You're right, I hadn't thought about that. The possibilities are really endless. It's all about getting creative and letting those decorating juices flow.
Precisely. And the ELF can help make those creative visions a reality.
Well, I think we've covered a lot of ground today. We've explored the ins and outs of the ELF Easy Light Feeder, seen it in action, heard from real users, and even pondered its impact on holiday decorating trends. It's been an enlightening journey.
It has. And if you're as intrigued by the ELF as we are, be sure to check out that YouTube video we keep mentioning. You'll find the link in the description of today's episode. It's definitely worth a watch.
All right, folks, that's a wrap for today's deep dive into the world of hassle-free holiday decorating. We hope you've enjoyed it. And until next time, happy decorating.